have a look at this picture and decide, what do you think the problem is? So quite clearly, that problem is too much water. It's a flood. So this lesson is all about flooding. So we're going to look at what are the causes of flooding, both the physical and the human causes. So why does flooding occur naturally, and how can we as humans, how can our actions make flooding actually worse? And you need to evaluate, so you need to make some judgments on what you think are the biggest causes of that flooding. So we're starting to look at the final bubble within rivers, and that's all about different management strategies. But if you know how to manage a flood, you've got to start with what actually causes it. So we'll look at things like precipitation, geology and relief, and we'll go through what those mean as we go through. So first thing, what is a flood? What causes it? There's a video there linked to YouTube. I'll post that and show my homework. If you can watch that video, and as you're watching it, I want you to answer those two questions. So what's a flood? Well, a flood is an overflow of a large amount of water beyond its normal limits. So it's land that is normally dry. If that is underwater, it's a flood. So water where you wouldn't normally have water. Water in a river, that's fine. That's not out of the normal. Water on the land, that's a flood. So we're specifically looking at when a river overflows its banks and floods an area land. And there's a range of causes: too much rainfall, building on the floodplain, chopping down trees, certain types of farming, certain types of rock, certain steepness of the land, and we'll go through those different types and explain what they mean and how they affect the flood risk. So at the start of the rivers topic, we looked at the hydrological cycle. Just a bit of a recap then. So you get evaporation over the ocean. That water vapor rises, it cools down, it condenses into clouds. Those clouds then move over the land, cause precipitation, rain, snow, sleet, hail, whatever it may be. That then lands on the ground. It can infiltrate, it can soak into the ground where it becomes part of the groundwater, or it can be caught by trees and plants, or it can be stored on the surface, or it can flow across the surface. And what we're concerned about in this lesson is we're thinking about from this precipitation stage and what happens when it lands on the ground, so before it heads back to the ocean. That's what our focus is. So here you've got a diagram showing the drainage basin. Remember the drainage basin, we did that at the start of the rivers topic, and that is just the area drained by one particular river. So I would normally give you a copy of this diagram, but obviously I can't. So I would like to have a go at drawing just a simplified version of it. It's not a work of art, just get the basic key terms, get the basics of that diagram. So you need to make sure on there you've labelled what are the inputs, so what is coming into this drainage basin, what are the stores in that system, so where is water held, then where is the flow. So a flow is just a movement of water, where water moves from one place to another, and then you've got an output. The output is where water leaves that drainage basin. So make sure you've drawn your diagram. You've got those labels on there and you've colour coded them to show which ones are inputs, which ones are outputs, what's a flow and what's a store. I'd then like to have a go at writing a definition for each of those key terms. So what does input mean? What does output mean? What does flow mean? What does storage mean? Some of these words on the diagram might also be quite new to you. If you don't know what they mean or you're a bit unsure, then use what's below here to write a definition for those key terms. I will be giving you a quiz at the end of this based on key terms, so make sure you know them. If you're unsure, definitely write them down. So I'll talk you through what's going on then. So in the drainage basin, we've got the input of precipitation. That is the only way really that water gets into a drainage basin, through rainfall, through snow, whatever it may be. That can be caught by the trees. They then store it. So the interception is a store in vegetation in plants, or it can be stored on the surface in things like puddles, small lakes, that kind of thing. So there's two stores. From both your plants and from those puddles, you can get evaporation or you can get transpiration from the plant, and that's an output. That water literally leaves that drainage basin, it goes into the air again, into the atmosphere, it's moved away and it's gone. So that's two outputs, either evaporation from puddles, lakes, or transpiration from the plants. Some of the water can then move, so a flow, by infiltration. Infiltration is when it soaks into the soil. If water infiltrates into the soil, it can then be held as soil moisture, which is a type of store. So where it's actually in the ground as water within your soil. That water can then move through flow, where it moves through the soil, and that's a flow because it's moving water, it's that soil moisture moving, or it can percolate. So you've got percolation. That's where it goes through the breaks in the rocks, the holes in the rocks, and it actually ends up in the groundwater. So if you, I don't know, dig a hole in your back garden, eventually you'd hit the water table, you'd hit water underground, and that's groundwater. It's where water is stored, so that's your store. And that groundwater as well, that can flow. And it's that groundwater that actually makes your river. So your rivers tend to happen where they hit the groundwater, hit the water table. You can see here, look. So if a river dries up, it's because the water table has dropped and it no longer hits the surface. And then you've got that water in your river that then flows away, either enters the lake, enters the sea, but that's gone, so that's an output. You can also get evaporation out of that river, which again is an output, as your evaporation here. And one that we didn't put, another flow, that's your surface runoff, so your overland flow. If water doesn't soak into the ground, it flows across the surface, a surface runoff, which is a flow. So you do need to know the difference between inputs, storage, flows, outputs, and what these key terms mean. The difference between saturated rock, that's when it's like full up. Think of a sponge that's full is saturated. When it's unsaturated, it means it's not full up of water, it can still take in more water. So once you're done with that, we'll move on. We're now going to look at the factors that might cause that river to overflow. So a river overflows, it's flooding. And you've got some that are natural, some that are caused by people. So these are your causes of flooding: precipitation, so rain, snow, sleet, hail, anything that falls from the sky. You can have different types, you can have different amounts, you can have different intensities. So heavier rain, lighter rain, that kind of thing. You then got geology, which basically means the type of rock. Steep slopes, so in mountains you've got steep slopes, in areas like Calverton, for example, you've got quite gentle slopes. Urbanisation, so the amount of building, how much concrete there is. Deforestation, so that's about chopping down trees. And agriculture, which is farming. So normally I would give you these, but you're either going to have to write them out or you're going to have to print them. I'll put the PowerPoint and show my homework, so if you want to print them, you can do so. So you just match up each of these keywords with the explanation. So for example, that first one says, building on a floodplain creates impermeable surfaces such as tarmac roads, concrete driveways and slate roofs. Water is transferred quickly to drains and sewers and then into urban river channels. This rapid movement of water makes flooding more likely. So that obviously is talking about urbanisation. It's talking about building in that drainage basin. So what you'd do is you'd write urbanisation and you'd then write that explanation as to why urbanisation causes flooding. Once you've gone through and you've written the keywords for each of them, I want to colour code them into whether you think they are a human cause of flooding, so caused by people, or whether they're a physical and natural cause of flooding. So that first one, urbanisation, well obviously people build, don't they? People lay tarmac, people lay concrete. So urbanisation would be a human cause of flooding, and you would colour code that in one colour. You've then got to rank them. So looking at how much impact do they have on flooding. The factor that you think has the largest impact, you're going to rank as number 1 and explain why, all the way through to number 6, which one you think has the least impact and why. So this means that leading to, therefore, you've got to explain why you think that. So I'll now go through the answers with you. So that first one, urbanisation, is a human cause. Second one is agriculture. So farming is a human cause because we farm, although it's natural, it's soil, it's plants. Humans actually change it. It's humans that plant the crops. It's humans that clear the trees. It's humans that plough the soil and affect the movement of water. Steep slopes, well, that's completely natural. The land is shaped naturally. It just means if you've got steep slopes, mountains, water doesn't infiltrate, it actually flows across the surface. It doesn't soak in. It's easier to flow across the surface. So it means water moves more quickly. As a result, it increases the risk of flooding. You then got geology. So if a rock is impermeable, it means water can't soak into it. Things like shales and clays, they make water flow across the surface because water can't soak into them. If water flows across the surface, it moves more quickly. So impermeable rocks means water gets into your rivers more quickly, which causes them to fill up more quickly, which makes it more likely that they're going to overflow. Next, you've got deforestation, so chopping down trees. That's a human factor. Although we're altering a natural thing, we're chopping down vegetation, which is natural, it's humans that are chopping it down. So that's why it's a human action. And what trees do, we know from our drainage basin diagram a minute ago, trees catch water, they store the water. Because they do that, it means less water in the river. You get rid of the tree, that tree isn't taking in any water. So it means more water in your river more quickly. Therefore, your river is more likely to overflow, it's more likely to flood. And your final one, you've got precipitation, so anything that falls from the sky. If you have a torrential rainstorm, like a really heavy rain, that can cause flash floods because you've got so much water falling in such a short period of time, it can't infiltrate, it can't soak into the ground. Instead, it flows across the surface into those rivers very, very quickly, causing it to overflow, causing your flood. But if you get less intense rain, but over a long period of time, so if it rains like every day for 2 weeks, everything's going to get full up. Your soil's going to get full up of water, your rivers are going to get full up of water, so it's going to cause you flood. So what you need to remember is anything that causes water to get into rivers very, very quickly causes flooding. That's why. Right, have a look at this diagram. This just shows you the whole drainage basin from the start, the source, all the way down to the mouth. Have a look at this. Where do you think flooding is likely to be the greatest and why? So you've got to explain it. Why? Is it going to be up here? Or is it going to be down here? Look at the shape of the land. Look at what's happening. Where is it going to be the greatest and why? So that leads us on to our decision. Flooding is a natural event. To what extent do you agree? So you can take evidence that we've gone through, so a cause of flooding, and you're going to write it on your opinion line. So do it over a full page. Anything, evidence that means you agree, you're going to position towards the left. Anything that means you disagree that it's natural, you're going to go to the right. We need to explain each point. This means that, leading to, therefore, as a result. You're then going to write an overall conclusion with your overall view from -5, 100% disagree, all the way to +5, 100% agree. Your decision. But you've got to explain it. So use your triggers. This means that, leading to, therefore. Flooding is a natural event. I agree to a large extent, so +5, because it's caused by heavy precipitation. You're always going to get floods because it's always going to rain. Or you might say, well, I disagree because actually people make it worse through urbanisation, deforestation, etc., etc. Right, after all of that, I want to have a go at the quiz. Key terms, key processes, yeah, and that's it. So, till next time, take care, bye-bye.